Staying with the U.S. elections, America is waking up to a new era as Joe Biden's victory in the U.S. presidential election continues to create shockwaves around the world. Our Washington correspondent Simon Marks joins us for more. Simon, I'm sure you must be surviving purely on energy drinks by now. How are you feeling, and how are the people of America feeling on the ground?
Well, I think it's fair to say that this live report is definitely brought to you by a double shot of espresso. But I see that within the last 25 minutes, the President of the United States is up and about at the White House, but is still not in the mood for conceding defeat in this election. The last thing we heard from him yesterday was that he still believed that he won the election, even though plainly he did not. And now this morning on Twitter, he is quoting a constitutional law expert here in Washington, who has for many months been loyal to President Trump, who is saying we should look at the votes. We're just beginning the tabulation stage. We should look at these allegations. We're seeing a number of affidavits that there has been voter fraud. I mean, the reality for President Trump is that right here, right now, a new day has dawned in Washington, D.C. President-elect Joe Biden, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris made it very apparent last night that they are not going to be derailed as they put the transition together. Remember, we're now into a 70-day interregnum while President Trump continues running the country before the President-elect Joe Biden takes over on January the 20th. And at this point, it's frankly academic as to whether President Trump ever formally concedes victory or not. It's understood here that late last night, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, spoke to the president and told the president it was indeed time to concede, time to engage in that time-honoured tradition of picking up the telephone, calling, in this case, Joe Biden, and congratulating him on his victory. But President Trump was not so moved last night and does not appear to be so moved here this morning. So we remain in a slightly curious moment where the Democrats know they've won the presidency. Republicans know the Democrats have won the presidency. We've now seen a second Republican senator, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, offer her congratulations to Donald Trump. World leaders all know that, to Joe Biden, I mean, world leaders all know that Joe Biden has won the presidency and are sending their congratulations in his direction. And the country, I think, will watch and wait to see if Donald Trump ever actually concedes, ever makes any kind of an address to the nation where he encourages his 70 million voters to put down the cudgels and support the country's president-elect in what will be his quest of trying to put the country back onto a path of stability and some semblance of normalcy coming at the end of January.
Simon, many, both in the media and Americans on the ground, criticized incumbent President Trump for spending the day yesterday on the golf course, taking that as a sign that he's withdrawing himself from any interaction on the ongoing legal challenges. He's sticking by his guns. He is adamant the election has been stolen from him. What is the sentiment that you got from Americans on his decision to play golf yesterday?
Well, this is a completely split country, Anlie. I mean, that's been apparent from this election. 74 million voted for Joe Biden, 71 million voted for Donald Trump, both men smashing records in terms of the number of votes that they got. And if we spun the clock back to this time last weekend, there wasn't a Democrat in the country that thought that Donald Trump was going to win 71 million votes in defeat. I mean, that's more votes in defeat than Barack Obama ever won in victory. So Donald Trump remains a very potent force here. And while it's easy to look at the pictures of celebrations on the streets here in Washington, people are gathering down in Black Lives Matter Plaza again right now, New York, San Francisco, Chicago, that's only telling you half the story, because the other half of the story is the 71 million voters whose man lost this election and who are now going to be bitterly disappointed, which is why, you know, the words that President Trump uses today, tomorrow, over the next several days are going to be hugely influential in what is still a potentially combustible situation on the streets here. Now, you know, his decision to play golf, I think, was occasioned by his determination to show that he doesn't think this thing is over. There won't be more legal action in the courts until Monday. So he's got the weekend, and it's a glorious weekend here in Washington, as you can see behind me. He's got the weekend to do what he often does at the weekend, which is relax and play golf. But, you know, he can be as adamant on Twitter, through campaign statements, through statements made by people like Rudy Giuliani, his personal lawyer. They can be as adamant as they like that election fraud has taken place here. They haven't produced a shred of evidence in any court to support that allegation. Now, they have the legal right, obviously, to do that, and they could start doing that on Monday. They could deluge the courts with paperwork absolutely demonstrating that Joe Biden has stolen the election, if they've got any. The problem is that so far they've put none into the public domain, none into the judicial domain, and the country, frankly, is moving on. I mean, the country's institutions are moving on. Joe Biden's transition team is forming. He's going to be appointing the members of his COVID-19 task force on Monday. He's going to start taking calls from foreign leaders, possibly today, possibly tomorrow. The page has been turned, and the only person in Washington who doesn't seem to understand that truly is the President of the United States.
That's such an important message, and one we've seen reinforced on American media throughout the last 24 hours. Those 71 million Americans who did vote for Trump, and as you said quite correctly, who are devastated that he's no longer president. That's something that's been taken up very clearly by Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, saying that it's time for America to unite. But as you said earlier, is it possible for Joe Biden to achieve unity without the participation of Trump and his Republican supporters?
I mean, Anlie, not to be jaded and cynical about it, but I've been here a very long time, and I've heard that speech that was made, not as eloquently as it was made last night by Joe Biden, but I've heard those cadences on numerous occasions before, where a president says at the end of a long, hard-fought campaign, I now want to unify the country. And some of them mean it, and some of them don't. I think Joe Biden genuinely means it when he says that he would love to find a way of uniting the United States of America. And he argues that he's got the political experience and he's a known quantity among Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, and he's going to have the capacity to reach out to them and persuade them to sit down with him and work together to try and sort things out in this country. The problem with that approach is that it's rooted in an era that may well have passed America by. This is now such a polarized nation that if you couldn't do it during Barack Obama's presidency, and to be fair, Barack Obama made precious little effort to reach out across the aisle and bring Republicans into the conversation, but if you couldn't do it between 2008 and 2016, trying to do it in 2020, when, as Joe Biden said last night, the country is 4 years into what he described as the grim era of demonization, in a social media world, a minute-by-minute news cycle, a world awash with conspiracy theories, and a conspiracy theorist supportive of QAnon, elected on the Republican ticket to the House of Representatives. She's coming to Washington in January. You know, Joe Biden thinks he can put the genie back in the bottle, but the genie's out of the bottle, and Donald Trump, in large measure, even after he leaves the White House, will be in control of the bottle through his Twitter feed, through the direct connection that he has with millions of his supporters. It's going to be a lifetime's work for Joe Biden trying to accomplish that.
Well, Simon, you're forgiven for being jaded. I hope you'll forgive me for being naively optimistic when I say that perhaps the miracle ingredient that hasn't been there before is a uniquely feminine energy. So I'm going to put my hopes on Kamala Harris and say that perhaps she can, being in Joe Biden's corner, they've got the winning ticket. Thanks very much. As always, a pleasure to speak to you. Simon Marks, our Washington correspondent.